Hello, beautiful people, and welcome to your astrological overview for the month of September. We're going to look at the main transits that are going to be taking place throughout September, and also look at the two charts of the lunations, which in fact are the eclipse charts, because we are going to be having the full moon lunar eclipse in Pisces next week on September 7th, and then close the Virgo season with the next and second new moon in Virgo on the analytic 29-degree, which will be a solar eclipse. So we're going to look at those, and as I mentioned before, I am taking some personal time off, so I will be also pre-recording my astrological overview for October before I leave Slovakia, where I'm visiting my family, and that will be posted at the end of September, so you can tune into it for the energies for October. And yeah, and then I guess I will be back to work, whatever that means for me, at the end of October after my honeymoon and my rebirth and everything that will be happening in the meanwhile. And if you haven't heard, then yes, I am going on honeymoon. And if you would like to support me in my next chapter of my life, then we created GoFundMe with my partner Aaron, and I'll put the link in the description. And yeah, with all of that out of the way, once again, I'm going to look into the transits. And yeah, the last reminder, of course, because of my personal time off, I will not be offering any readings throughout that period of time. So the last day I am available to offer readings is actually morning on September 4th, and then I will pick up again at the end of October. So okay, so that's all my news out of the way. So as I mentioned, I'm just going to name the main things for the months of September. I will not be telling you about all the moons and everything, where moons are during each day of the month. But yeah, the main things to pay attention to, obviously, we are going to enter into September with Monday the 1st. On that day, Saturn will re-enter the sign of Pisces. Saturn will remain in the sign of Pisces until February 14th, 2026, which is the Valentine's Day, and then move back into the sign of Aries. Then on September 2nd, Mercury will move into the sign of Virgo, the sign of his rulership and also traditionally exaltation. On September 18th, Mercury will move into the sign of Libra, so it will not stay in the sign of Virgo for very long. On the September 19th, Venus will move into the sign of Virgo. On September 22nd, right before Sun moves into the sign of Libra, Mars will move into the sign of Scorpio, which is also the traditional sign of his rulership. And also 22nd of September, it's when we're going to experience Equinox, because that's when Sun will be moving into the sign of Libra and start the final trimester of this year, the year of number 9, 2025, the 9th month of the year, September. So those are the ingresses. As I already mentioned, both lunations are eclipses. The lunar eclipse in Pisces is taking place on September 7th, and the solar eclipse in Virgo on September 21st. Then the only stationings we are having is Uranus stationing retrograde on September 6th. So during the time of this first eclipse, which is the lunar eclipse in Pisces, Uranus is also already retrograde. And then with regards to the astrological highlights, we have the Mercury square Uranus on September 3rd, Jupiter trine in North Node exact on September 3rd, Mars is squaring Jupiter on September 5th, then on September 10th, Sun is conjuncting South Node opposing North Node on September 12th, Mercury is conjuncting South Node opposing North Node, and then also on the same day we have Sun sextiling Jupiter, and then on September 13th, Mercury is going to sextile Jupiter and conjunct Sun in the sign of Virgo, which is very interesting because Mercury doesn't normally conjunct Sun twice in 2 months, but we had the last conjunction between Sun and Mercury in the sign of Leo last month on August 1st, actually, when Mercury was retrograde. So now we are having Mercury direct, and they're having another conjunction in the sign of Virgo on September 13th, which is right after the first eclipse and, 1 week away from the second eclipse. So right in the middle. All right, then September 16th, Venus will sextile Mars. September 17th, Mercury will oppose Saturn. September 19th, Mercury will oppose Neptune. September 19th also, Mercury will trine Uranus and trine Pluto, so that seems to be a busy day. Then September 20th, Venus will square Uranus. This is already Venus being a sign of Virgo. September 21st, Sun will oppose Saturn. September 23rd, Sun will oppose Neptune. September 24th, Sun will trine Uranus, and also trine Pluto, and Mars will also square Pluto on September 24th. So these are the main things that will be taking place throughout September for us. And now let me just share the screen so you can see the 2 lunations we will be experiencing. I did not prepare all the previous charts with regards to when these lunations were seeded and stuff like that. I'm going to consider whether I will be including that going forward, or whether there will be some kind of, something that me and people interested in will get together on Zoom once or twice a month to talk about particular lunation or lunations, where we can dive into all of these things. Again, I'm taking 2 months off to really reevaluate and reconsider everything to do with me as a person, my life, and also my professional appearance and offerings. So yeah, so this is the first eclipse, and this is actually the time of the eclipse. As you can see, the sun and the moon are not exactly on the same minutes. A moon is on 24 minutes, sun on 22 minutes. So this is the actual eclipse, not the full moon, but the eclipse. So the full moon is actually happening a few minutes before. So we can see there are actually quite a few in conjunction. And also a side note again, if you would like to hear more in-depth interpretation of these charts that I'm going to be showing you right now, and also my partner's Aaron's interpretation of these energies of the eclipses, then you can check out our collaboration we recorded for Lada's channel, Lada Doncheva's channel, which by the time you are watching this video very likely have been released or will have been released on her YouTube channel. And also in our last Beyond Replication video, our last collaboration, we went more in depth into the meaning of these eclipses and Aaron's take on these things. So I'm just going to kind of skim through it. I don't want to repeat myself and go into details, because it's already been discussed in 2 videos, which you can find now on YouTube. So yeah, so we can see here is the full moon lunar eclipse. Mercury is conjunct Sun. The exact conjunctions, as you just heard me saying, is happening on September 13th, and Sun is conjunct South Node, which again, the exact conjunction between Sun and the South Node is on September 10th, so 3 days later. So we can see there is a square, so there is still a lot of pressure for us with regards to this unknown we're stepping into, revolutionizing our human experience, also with Uranus still being a sign of Gemini, but already retrograde during these relations. We are really reconsidering our choices, because now we have this new energy of Uranus in Gemini in our field. Since Uranus being in a Gemini already 2 months by this point, we already have a kind of a little bit of an idea what Uranus in Gemini is bringing with itself, which is this acceleration with regards to the potentialities, a way of thinking, breaking out of the old boxes, with regards to our limited way of thinking or our old program and stuff like that. So with this trine that is being continuously happening between Pluto and Uranus, this is helping us to break the old patterns. But Pluto is at the precipice of this T-square with, Lilith over here conjunct Mars, and also Chiron from this other side. And Chiron and Pluto, they are in the first quarter square, which is the crisis in action. And Chiron retrograde is bringing up all these wounds. Obviously, Chiron being ruled by Mars in opposition with Mars. All of these things are balancing, something that I already spoke about in my previous videos, this old karma, like we have the opportunity to free ourselves from these old contracts, from this old karma. Obviously, this is Pisces full moon lunar eclipse, so it's giving us the opportunity for healing, releasing, letting go, illumination of that which needs to be healed, released, and all the rest of it. Also, Neptune still in the sign of Aries until end of October. Saturn already here in the sign of Pisces. This is the first lunation with Saturn in the sign of Pisces. Uranus retrograde. So again, the energies are shifting, changing, and Saturn, being on this anaretic 29 degrees, once again is reminding us of what actually lost meaning. But at the same time, we have the opportunity to have a gratitude and compassion for all of those before us who went through all of these experiences, this Virgo South Node, to help us understand that yes, this is now outdated. It held a meaning, held a purpose, it was important, it created the foundation of the reality we are experiencing at the moment. But Uranus being almost done with Taurus, having last retrograde coming up into Taurus in the sign of in November, and then be fully done with Taurus for this, side of the century, really. by the end of April 2026, the foundation is being dismantled, like with Uranus being done with Taurus by the end of April 2026. So we have to create a new foundation. And that's also what all of these Virgo, energies over here, the Sun Mercury conjunction, Sun South Node conjunction. This is a closing phase at the time of this eclipse. This is what we have the opportunity to culminate, right? Like the things that helped us to create the life we are experiencing at the moment, but now experiencing and being fully aware of the limitations, what it represents now in the 21st century, namely 2025, the 9 months of the 9 year. We are 2 days later on September 9th going to experience the triple 9 day, right? The 9-9 portal with the extra 9, which adds up to number 27, which is still a number 9. So this is all about the culminations, and I already spoke about this in my previous videos, which like I shared on my YouTube channel, why this is such a pivotal month of this year, this Virgo season, in this year of Hermit, this year 9, right? And we are going to be ushered into the final trimester. If you're thinking about Aries being the beginning of the astrological year, then literally this is a final trimester of the 9-month period, right? From March until the end of the year, ending with Capricorn in this case, which is where we're going to end the Gregorian year of 2025 and enter into 2026, which is the year 10, right? The reset year. So we are literally going to end our pregnancy, rebirthing ourselves, rebirthing the foundation of humanity. And that's why these lunations in particular, these Virgo season lunations, which we are having free of, because we know that we started the Virgo season with the Virgo New Moon number 1 on the 0 degrees, which I already covered. You can find a video on my YouTube channel again if you would like to understand more that lunation in itself. And we're going to end with the Virgo New Moon on the Anaretic 29 degrees, so the alpha and the omega of Virgo. And what is Virgo? Virgo is the human experience. It's everything that ever happened on this planet lived and experienced by human race, right? The human collective consciousness. So we have the opportunity to really accept the lessons with gratitude and grace and let go of everything that is not really serving anymore. And that's why there is this pressure from Pluto to the Lilith, who is dancing from Scorpio to Libra to Sagittarius during the next lunation, which is the new moon in Virgo number 2. We have Lilith back in the sign of Scorpio, right? Like she's bringing up a lot of these patterns, like the patterns of the humanities that are hiding in the shadows because we don't really want to address them. And now obviously Lilith being in this opposition with Chiron in a T-square with Pluto, it's becoming very obvious to us, like, okay, well, how did we get to this point, this point of crisis and imbalance? Because there are so many things we don't want to look at, and a lot of these things, we can see that in this in conjunction to Saturn, are because we are so attached to this definition of how things should be based on the past, right? Because Capricorn Cancer, they come as a pair, right? So we are so connected to this old Piscean age, the things that created the structure of our reality, the culture, the religion, the history, the ancestor lineage, all these things, all these things that gave us the sense of identity. This is who I am. This is where I came from, which obviously is not fully correct, because we don't have actually the real human history to our disposal at this time. But anyway, what we do know shaped the identity that we uphold, that we carry with ourselves throughout our life. So with this, with this Lilith, which is the dark moon, right, the shadow of our consciousness, the unconscious in a sense, it's making this in conjunction to the Saturn-Neptune conjunction, and Neptune, as I mentioned, still being in the sign of Aries, ruled by this Mars, this in conjunction with this Lilith. It's bringing things for balancing, right? And this is again going back to these karmic contracts that we have with one another, play to one another. Mercury over here on this 10 degree, which technically is already moving Mercury into the second decan of Virgo, which is the Capricorn decan, and the 10 is the year we're heading into, technically 3.5 months time, 4 months time. So Mercury being a Virgo, being in his exaltation, being on this number 10, right, which is the wheel of fortune, is already helping us to discern, discern and decide, like, what am I choosing to learn from this, and what am I choosing to now identify as something that is not going to be supporting me going forward. Is this going to be part of my toolbox to support me in this pathway going forward, in my hero's journey going forward? So there is with the full moon, any full moon, there is an illumination. Illumination, which means that we have much more clarity that we had during the time of the seeding of this full moon, which was actually in March, I believe, right? The new moon in Pisces, yeah, February 28th of February, not even March, February 28th. That's when we had the new moon in Pisces, which was not an eclipse, it was just a new moon. We actually not having any new moon in Pisces solar eclipse in this time around in this cycle, right, for the next 8 years or so, because they are full moons, because it's saying about the culmination. Yeah, this is really the time. This is really the time in the human history when the Pisces age is becoming fully illuminated to us, what belongs to the past and is not coming with, and what of the past we're going to redefine and restructure and revamp, modernize or whatever, and take with us into Aquarian age, just this new expression of the same thing. So this is what's becoming very present and very tangible to us with the Virgo, right? Tangible, it's a practical, it's a earth sign, right? You can hold it, but at the same time it's very mutable energy. So this is changing because we are changing. We are going through this collective process of metamorphosis, death and rebirth, right? And especially now with this Uranus trying to Pluto, everything is accelerated. It's happening very quickly. Well, let's just still keep looking at this Pisces chart. So yeah, and like I mentioned, there is this in conjunction, there are these multiple in conjunctions being formed, which is all these blind spots, Venus over here making an in conjunction to this North Node. As I mentioned, the exact conjunction to Venus, well, exact in conjunction actually between Venus and North Node will be happening a few days after, I think 2-3 days later. So in any case, there is this in conjunction, which is the blind spot. Venus by this point being on that 15th degree, which is the Sagittarius decan, the Gemini degree of Leo. And this is all about you're not going to find the information that's going to support you in this rebirthing process, this becoming your authentic version of yourself in the past, not necessarily, because, with the Pisces, that was a completely different age for humanity, where completely different things were being learned and wanted to be experienced by our soul. So with this Venus being a sign of Leo, and we know that already, as I mentioned in previous videos, we had Mars going through the territory, Mercury, Sun, everything. So now Venus is bringing it to life. Venus is our relationships. And yeah, making an in conjunction, technically exact in conjunction to this full moon, right? Full moon. She is helping us to understand that the things that where we go in, especially with this expansion of consciousness, the Jupiter in Cancer, cannot really be found in a past necessarily. We can learn from it. We can understand. We can learn from the lessons, of what didn't work in a past. But it's not really going to show us, in authentically what that means to you. It's not going to help you to understand that, because you have to have your own experience. You have to embody it yourself for yourself. There's the sun in Virgo, in this Capricorn decan. You have to become your own authority and take responsibility for what it is that you want to experience, because everything that you experience in your life, to a certain extent, yeah, you manifested that, the good, bad, obviously then we can fight about it and say, oh, I didn't bring this onto myself, what you talking about? But on a soul level, the soul knows exactly what's going on, in some way, we have a free will, we have a free will. Okay, how am I going to feel about this? How am I going to respond to this? But what is going on in our life, and to major extent what's happening, it's our higher self being in charge, so but it's still you, so you have a free will. It's just not always extended to the full extent to your ego self, right? So that's what I mean, you have to you had to have the lived experience to understand that, okay, I actually have the power to influence my situation based on how I respond to it. And I learned that over and over and over again through life. So again, going through this illumination, Pisces full moon lunar eclipse being seeded only a month after we had the beginning of the snake year, the 29th of January, the new moon in, was it new moon? Yes, new moon in Aquarius. New moon in Aquarius is when we entered into this lunar year of wood snake. And yeah, and obviously the new moon in Pisces happened less than a month after 28th of February. So we were already in the process of shedding. And yeah, Pisces season, ending. It was the end of the former astrological year, which was the year of strength, right? The 2024. So with this Mercury conjunct Sun, in this case, it's the closing, right? Closing to Sun. So closing phase conjunction, it's again allowing us to recognize what it is that we don't necessarily need to repeat again. We don't have to go through this again. But, because of the in conjunction, what that means to you personally, you cannot necessarily understand with logic. You have to feel into it. You need to tap into it. You had to have the experience. You need to be able to discern and apply it into practice in your own life. So then when we look at the new moon, number 2, the new moon in Virgo, the solar eclipse in this case, which also was, well, I mean, we had the new moon just now, obviously on, gosh, August. It was now in August. I'm completely losing concept of days. All August 23rd, right? That's when we had the first new moon in Virgo on 0 degrees. No, August 20. Yeah, it was August 23rd, right? Now I'm confusing myself. Let me just double check that. I'm pretty sure it was 23rd. Yeah, 23rd. Yeah, August 23rd. We had the first new moon in Virgo. So that new moon in Virgo was seeded. Well, actually, obviously it is the seeding because it's a new moon. But the previous moon before that was an eclipse, right? That was on the 14th of March. And also the next full moon in Virgo will be also an eclipse because we do have the new moon in Aquarius next year in spring. On the 17th of February, so not quite spring. And then we'll have on a 3-3 portal the full moon in Virgo, which will be once again an eclipse. So we have a lot of very destined karmic energy connected to this Virgo, and obviously with South Node being in Virgo, which is where we've been, we lived life on this planet a certain way. So again, we have 2 lunations, 2 new moons in Virgo, 1 month apart, not even. And they are on these very profound degrees, right? The analytic degrees. I mean, this is an eclipse, and you can see moon is not yet on the 29 degrees, it's on 28:59, but the actual new moon is on 29 degrees and 4 minutes. So these are very important things to pay attention to because it is again the alpha and omega. We started with the 0 point, which is saying like, okay, you can decide, and that moon was of course squared by Uranus. You can decide where you want to go from here, what experience you want to have. Mercury at the time was in Leo, but during the time of the first new moon in Virgo. And now we have Mercury in Libra. This is post the conjunction with Sun. We have Mercury in Libra on this 5 degree. We know 5 degrees the chaos agent. And this is a new phase conjunction. And Mercury in Libra is all about balance. Like, okay, how can we balance, the past with the future? What can we create, from that place? And again, Venus here is in Virgo. So actually Venus and Mercury have a mutual reception, they support in one another. So Venus here being on a 2 degree always represents a choice. So where are we going to go from here? Where are we going to go from here? What are we going to experience? What are we going to create? And this moon is in a new phase conjunction with this south node. The full moon over here is in a closing phase. Here, the conjunction not yet happened. It's happening 3 days later. But this new moon in Virgo is in a new phase conjunction. So there is a whole new cycle beginning, but we can see the paradox again, the 0 and the 29, the closing phase and the 0. And now we have the new phase and the 29. So the cycles are ever continuing, there is no like really an end, there is a continuous expansion of consciousness, expansion of our experience as a species on this planet. But now we are at that point in human history where things are changing. Okay, well, maybe we look around ourselves and we don't see so much change yet. We can still see the bones of the old system. We know that the bones will remain for a long time after you're dead. So the bones are still standing, the Saturn, the Capricorn, the structure, they standing. However, we know Saturn is leaving Pisces fully on 14th of February next year, and then having a conjunction with Neptune on that analytic 0 degree for a few days after, I believe is on the 20th of February. So this is it, the Saturn, the manifested reality and Neptune, which is the source, the all that is, are coming together on 0 degrees in Aries, right? 0 degrees in Aries. And this is right after the new moon solar eclipse in Aquarius, the first one, which is on February 17th. So this is not a coincidence. This is not a coincidence. And yeah, and Pluto here still in the square, here it's Pluto is actually squaring out of sign, yeah, because Mars is not yet in Scorpio at this point, but it's squaring this Mars and it's squaring Chiron still, and there is also this square from Chiron to Jupiter, right? So there is all this pressure, this story has to change. Like, technically, yeah, Jupiter is squaring Mars as well. So we have this grand cardinal cross almost, because Pluto is in a fixed sign, but we have this cross formed in the sky during the time of the second new moon in Virgo, solar eclipse 29-degree worth. So there is a lot of pressure. There is a lot of pressure for things to change and will continue to be so, even though this moon in itself is actually trined by Uranus, unlike the previous new moon in Virgo, which was squared by Uranus. Now it's trined by Uranus. So we know that change doesn't happen when things go easy. When everybody's happy, comfortable, all the needs are being met, we don't change nothing. Why would we? Things always have to change when there is an invitation and a lot of pressure for things to change when things are not comfortable. And this is what's going on with these lunations. But at the same time, we can see the kite, the kite is here in operation. So obviously this is destined, this is divinely guided, this is divinely orchestrated, with the Pisces and the Virgo, a little bit of a Libra over here, a little bit of Aries over here, Mercury opposing this Neptune, already coming out of the exact opposition, but still in action. And Neptune obviously opposing the new moon with Saturn, both of them. So there is a lot of balancing that's taking place. And this is the Alpha and the Omega, the 0 and the 29, the Saturn in Pisces, Neptune in Aries. The past has to be like zeroed, right? So we can move forward, but we don't have to burn 100% of the karma for it to be right off. It has to be just 51%, I believe. It has to be just, more than the half. So we can see that there is a lot of support. There is a lot of support, but the choice is yours. The choice is yours. And the choice comes from how much you love yourself, how much you trust yourself, how much you believe that you deserve better than what you experience in the moment, right? With these Taurus over here. Do I think this is the best I can have? This life doesn't mean I'm not grateful for it, but do I think that this is all I can achieve? Am I good to stop here? Or do I want to expand further? There is no wrong question to this answer. There's no wrong answer to this question. It just depends. What do you want? Like with this Jupiter in Cancer, by this point on the final decan and on the number 21, interesting. There's the world, the world card in tarot, the maturation, graduation, right? The 21, and that adds up to number 3, which is the Jupiter number, the expansion. And we know that the 3 in tarot is the Empress, the new Earth. The 12 is Hangman, which is also, connected to Jupiter because it is, technically it's Neptune. But both of those are connected to North Node at the moment, which is over here, right? So there is a lot of support. There is a lot of support. At the same time, with all this in conjunction, again, we have in play over here, and there are many more of them here than there were in this previous chart. There are a lot of blind spots, we don't know. Like in conjunction is always Virgo or Scorpio, just those two flavors. So you either have to have the lived experience and just allow things to happen. Like, my partner says, time takes time. Time takes time, you just have to go through it and you have to wait, be patient. And then is the Scorpio part, which is that, okay, well, time has passed and now you know what you need to eliminate, right? What you need to let go of, you have to rebirth yourself, which is the process that I'm going to be entering into during my time off, right? So yeah, but here Lilith is happy, Here Lilith is not challenged. Here Lilith is in trine. So it's saying like, okay, well, finally these things are coming up. She's actually in an exact trine with this Jupiter over here. This story has to change, right? The story has to change. Pluto is in Aquarius, the ruler. Mars is on this analytic 29 degrees, right? Mars is moving shortly after on the 22nd, right before Sun moves. So there are all these analytic degrees going on here. Mars in Libra, as mentioned in the previous videos, to me acts like Archangel Michael. We have the ability and the opportunity to break free from these old contracts, to not have to regurgitate this past story and play these old roles. We can now be more future focused, right? Future focused with the Pluto being in sign of Aquarius. We can become the magicians to consciously create, 2010, in the next year, these different timelines. We don't have to keep being stuck in these old timelines, playing the same roles, of victim, martyr, prosecutor, and savior. We can break free from this. But it takes a conscious choice. It takes a conscious choice and this self-trust, and this sense of I can do it, the Virgo, like feeling that I am qualified, I can do it, because many of us is like, oh, I don't know, I'm not ready. I need another course, I need another diploma, I need another, I don't know what, more time, something. And that's okay. If that's what you feel you need, then that's okay, but they're like here, the yod is pointing to Venus in Virgo. Well, I don't know. I mean, you have a choice. Of course, you have a choice how this is going to play out for you. But, with regards to human relational dynamics, you've seen all you need to see to understand what's going on here. Now, Mercury is done with Virgo by this point. You've seen enough to understand where you at, based on the sense of imbalance you feel in your own life. You don't need to know all the details. And also the other in conjunction here pointing to this Neptune Saturn, in conjunction, the other yacht pointing to this Saturn Neptune conjunction, the 0 and the, almost 29, but the Aries and the Pisces, the beginning of the endings. We know that the source now has a new desire, which is this desire of new direction, new beginning, exploring new horizons with the Pluto in this sextile, with Neptune. It's all being supported by the evolution and the desire of the souls of everybody incarnate on this planet. And on the other side, and we have also the yacht pointing towards Mars on this 29 anaretic of Libra. So what are you choosing, with regards to these relational dynamics towards yourself, others, and existence? This is a Gemini deacon of Libra. What role do you want to play? What role do you want to play? Because then Mars enters his rulership, Scorpio, and it goes like, okay, now we're gonna go deep. Now now after you've chosen what role you want to play, this is an initiation, in Libra, opposition with this Aries, right? Aries is the beginning, and then Libra, we come to the point where things have to be balanced, and now we're being initiated again, is the what you call it, the upside down chart, right? When people have Libra rising, and then Scorpio, now we're gonna dig deep. Now we're gonna go for the process of death and rebirth. The foundation has to change. It is the same thing, just from the opposite side, right? Like you have the Aries and you have a Taurus. You start your life, you have the foundation, but then you go through these 6 houses, and then you get to the next crossroad, this Libra thing, and then you go like, okay, well, now we have to start from the scratch again. We have to balance what is out of balance, go for the death and rebirth to create new foundation. We're going to look at things from a different perspective, start new story, start new chapter, redefine everything, our reality, and then we're gonna free ourselves from it all. And then, whatever lost meaning, we're gonna let it go. So it's like this continuous cycle, and there are so many cycles within cycles within cycles. Your life is not just one narrow road, you were born and you die and everything in between, right? It's the ups and downs, and things are in a different stages of cycles. This thing is at beginning, this thing is ending, this thing is somewhere in the middle, this thing is this first quarter square, last quarter square, where the hell it is. So with these lunations, because the eclipses are the new moon, full moon on a steroid, this is where there is a much heightened sensitivity. And obviously Jupiter being in Cancer until the end of June 2026, we are very sensitive to all lunations anyway, because everything is amplified and it's very in our face, like this is where we were mentioning this many times, me and multiple colleagues of mine, we worked with, like how astrology is becoming so literal, it's becoming so like textbook, like, oh my God, I really felt this new moon, full moon, Virgo season, whatever season, it doesn't matter, these aspects, because Jupiter is amplifying everything, and it's in Cancer, so we can feel everything very strongly. And it's the traditional rule of the North Node. There is the flooding, the past is here in the present moment. We are feeling everything so strongly. But as I mentioned, this is all divinely supported, divinely supported. There is a lot of water, a lot of intuition we are being reconnected to our emotions, our sense of self, our intuitions, our ancestral lineage with regards to the guidance, So there are a lot of things, there are a lot of things happening, but yeah, with the in conjunction, you don't know. You just have to go through the experience, you have to feel into it, and sometimes you have to allow aspects of yourself die to really for this new horizon to open, because there are things that are taking place that are not allowing other things to coexist simultaneously if it's not a frequency resonance, if they are on a different frequency. So yeah, so I feel like all in all, this month of September being the 9 months of the 9 year and taking us from this second trimester into the final trimester of this process of rebirthing ourselves, releasing old aspects and embodying new aspects of who we came here to be. And obviously then after this, we're going to have the equinox a day later. We're going to enter literally into a last season, final season of 2025 with the after effects of this eclipse. And then next day is the equinox when sun moves into the sign of Libra. And then things will be balancing. But like balance doesn't just happen on its own. We usually realize what needs balancing through crisis. So that's what I feel, like also like the connotation of Virgo being like this crisis and, like nervous system overload and stuff like that. But it's showing us something that needs to be adjusted, something that we need to learn from. Like Virgo is like, it just shows it to you, like points it out, like we know it can be like critical and judgmental because like all these previous, five sons, oh, okay, I want to look at it, like, but then Virgo comes and it just like literally calls it out, like, meh, you have this thing going on there, like, hey, don't you want to tidy up this mess or something? Because if you don't do anything with it, then, it's just going to start, like, it's going to get bigger. And then with Capricorn, it's going to manifest into something that you might not wish to see manifested in your reality, right? So anyway, so there are all these things going on in everyone's life. And like I said, this is a very profound month, the most important month of 2025, really, because it's that the 9 months of the 9 year. We have the triple 9 day, the 9 portal plus another nine because of the year nine. We have the equinox, we have the eclipses, we have the sun conjunct south node, opposed north node. The eclipse is obviously happening on a south and a north node in Virgo Pisces, and then it's also this Uranus gestation retrograde. Saturn moved into Pisces for the final time a year after Saturn Pluto moved into the sign of Capricorn for the final time. That was also beginning of September, and we had the new moon in Virgo at the beginning of September last year. So all those things are coming around for the final push, for the final push and for the final reevaluation before we really, really start manifesting these timelines we have been choosing throughout these seasons, especially these summer seasons with this Mercury retrograde. And yeah, and then in 2026, whatever these timelines were that you now taking responsibility for, and whatever is not in resonance with these timelines, you will have to release in these upcoming 3 months, the final trimester. Then whatever is left, that's what you're going to start bringing into physical manifestation next year with all of the new planetary placements, Saturn, Neptune back in a sign of Aries by the end of April, Uranus back in a sign of Gemini, and in June, Chiron moving into a sign of Taurus. So that will be our new foundation. Chiron, the key between Saturn and Uranus, the manifested form, which now became limited because everything in a physical form has an expiry date. Everything that is in a form, in a material form, has an expiry date. It was created and at some point it will have to end. It will have to die, Like the spirit is eternal, but the physical form has an expiry date. So with Chiron moving into the sign of Taurus, the new foundation is created from inside out because this manifested reality at the moment is the reality that was cultivated and had it peaked at the different time of human history in a Piscean age. But now we're moving past it, right? We are now in Aquarian age for 100 years already. So with Pluto now in Aquarius, Saturn, Neptune in Pisces, soon to be next year, and Uranus in Gemini, it is getting real, all this prediction, all this, like Dolores Cannon, splitting of the timelines, all these things that were being said and spoke about for a long time, long time. This is the time they were talking about. This is the time in the human history. And where you go from here it's your choice, you know, it is the free will's choice. Like, yes, there are certain things that are, you know, like you don't get much say because your higher self is in charge fully. I mean, higher self is always in charge, but there are certain things where you have more leeway and, you know, more of a so-called free will where you feel like, oh, yeah, well, I don't have to do that. But, you know, but you have this internal wiring that is always guiding you and navigating you into the direction that's right for you, really. So it's just a matter of, surrendering and accepting that it is what it is, you know? Like, it doesn't mean I can't change it, but without accepting that it is what it is right now, I cannot really change it because if I'm in a constant refusal and resentment and rejection to what is, then I'm just chasing my tail all the time and keep reattracting the same situation. So, yes, so this Virgo season is going to bring a lot of wisdom to us. Well, no, a lot of information and knowledge that when applied into practice will become your wisdom and your legacy, right? Because Virgo trines to Capricorn and the foundation for the future, you know, the trine to Taurus. And yeah, and that what we will be fully exploring next year when Chiron moves into the sign of Taurus in June, with Jupiter still in the sign of Cancer on the final degrees at the time. So anyway, guys, so I think this is good. I think this is enough. Like I said, if you would like to hear more in-depth interpretation of the charts of the eclipses, then check out Lada's channel, right? That's where me and Aaron dive deep within these charts. And also, if you would like to hear more in-depth interpretation of the eclipse season, then check out Beyond Replication, which you can find on my channel, Aaron's channel, or on our channel, Beyond Replication. So yeah, so as I already mentioned, I will be pre-recording something similar for October before I leave here in Slovakia, which you will be able to find on my YouTube channel at the end of September, after all of this craziness of eclipses and stuff, where we will be already building up towards the full moon in Aries, right? That will be the first lunation for October. I haven't checked yet, so I don't know. But yeah, you know, so oh, and yeah, the last announcement, of course, on Monday, the Stars and Cards episode 41, number 5, about the eclipses is coming up. So if you would like to hear more about it from the perspective of Stars and Cards, and my solstice Marissa also sharing her insights with regards to these energies and our interpretations of the cards that were pulled out, that will be coming out on Monday, September 1st. And yeah, and I'm actually going to record a part 2 of this video. I'm going to do the same thing as I normally do with lunation, where I'm just going to pull some cards. In this case, not just for a particular lunation as per se, but for the month ahead, right? September ahead. So yeah, so this is all I got. So with that, I wish you all a wonderful eclipse season, and I'll see you on the other side of all of this. So much love, everyone, and bye for now.